the human condition, according to Taoism, is built on three things: your Jing, your Qi, and your Shun. That's what comprises a human being. Meaning, Jing gives you a body. So Qi animates it. Now we can do this kind of stuff because we got Qi. We can raise our hands. All of you should understand that since you were little, you've been practicing mind over matter every day. This is matter. My mind said reach. I've done it. Shun is what gives you consciousness. So we get a whole body. We get this body. It gets to move. It also gets to think. But it's much more deep than that when you start talking about Taoist practices. Jing. Let's be very clear about what Jing is. I'm going to try to put this in a light so that you really get it. Jing is the water in you. And you're 4/5 water. Take away the water in you, all these different things from your tears, your saliva, your sexual secretions, your blood, hormones, on and on and on. If they all left your body, you'd just be a bone with some skin hanging on it. There'd be nothing. You need fluids. You got brain fluids. They're just crucial to your whole existence. Then you get to Qi, and Qi is like, as I was saying, it's like electricity. You got all these different meridians running through your body that if they tap into them right, we cure problems, good for our health. You're starting to see more and more and more of acupuncture. When I was 32 years old, you said acupuncture, they thought you were really weird. Seriously, I was doing Tai Chi. My family was ready to denounce me because I was doing Tai Chi. And I went to a Buddhist monastery. Yeah. Of course, then I started writing books and I got on TV and I made a bunch of money. Then they loved me. Stuart's smart. That's the way it always goes. So the thing here is that when you are thinking of brocades, in these simple little exercises, all of these things I've been talking about are being stimulated. This is what's making it work. Anybody that practices 8 brocades over any period of time starts going, I don't know why, but it makes me feel good. But I don't know why. And 8 brocades is the very basis of all qigong, of all of it. Everything that you see nowadays with all these new wonderful names, eagle snorts cocaine or something. I don't know. They're all based on 8 brocades. This is where it all originally came from. I mean, the whole idea of qigong actually goes back to, the 8 brocades is using this, but the original idea that they discovered was on a sword handle from the Shang dynasty. Okay, 4,000 years ago. Well, actually more than 4,000 BC. Okay, so on this sword handle, it talked about, and keep in mind, sword handles back then, they were really big. They weren't like the little ones now. They were like this long. But on it was a description. It was called the cure. And in it, he talked about having a pain in his wrist. And he inhaled, held his breath, and focused on that spot, and then released it. And he said, the more I did this, the more heat I generated. This is really fascinating because as he worked with it, he found out he could move that heat, which was qi. Now, what is qi? Well, first let me describe, because in Chinese, if you learn their language, then you can understand all these things. But even most Chinese, because they don't know what the characters mean anymore. But qi shows a pot with the character for rice within it. So it's the idea of cooking rice. Then off the top are vapors. That's what qi is. It's the vapors. like they would say in the old South. I got the vapors. They got Qi. So what you're doing is, this is your pot. Your lower dantian, this little tiny spot in your lower abdomen, is what you're trying to expand, to develop. Now, let me just go back and explain that. In acupuncture, which is called YiJing, external elixir, Nadon, whole nother subject, means internal elixir. So you go for acupuncture, they're playing with the YiJing meridians. That has nothing to do with what you get in internal alchemy. These are like dry riverbeds. And being from Arizona, you should know this, that when it rains or snows up in the mountains and it all melts, it surely always melts, it comes flowing down and goes through the riverbeds, filling them up. That's what they call these extraordinary, subtle psychic meridians. They're dry. They're not opened. If they were opened, you'd know it. You'd feel it. Because that's where this kind of fluid feeling comes from. Way down, you kind of get heat, tingling sensations. But internally, these meridians are what, once you start filling them up, and you do that through Ching and Qi, by doing these like brocades and things, you start feeling the effects, and then it does feel fluid. You start feeling in your body like there's something fluid moving around you. And there's only 8 of them. You know, in acupuncture, you got, like, interestingly enough, about 365 points on your body. You know, and you've got, you know, a whole series of 14, some each left and right side of meridians are going all over the place. But these 8 subtle meridians, they're really defined. And unfortunately, the Chinese never changed the names. So Dumo, going up your back, is called Dumo both in acupuncture and in internal alchemy. So everybody got confused. Because here's the truth. If internal alchemy was identical to internal alchemy, then all you'd have to do is go to an acupuncturist and say, put those needles on my back and get my Dumo working. And then you'd be done. You'd be immortal. And this elixir, you can't take it out of you and inject it into somebody else. It's not that, okay? This is what you have to do for yourself. But truthfully, it's not complicated. I just have to say, I mentioned this earlier, is that, you know, I've written lots and lots of books, I've done lots and lots of stuff, and I still feel lazy. I've practiced, I've done, okay, you don't know my whole history, but part of what I did in my life was, for 2.5 years, I bowed down the roads from Minnesota into Nebraska, what they call 9 steps in a bow. It would take me a whole day to get a mile. You know, and it was really interesting to be out there in Buddhist robes, bowing through middle America. But I have to tell you, cops were my best friends. They really were. I thought they would be my enemy when I first started. They turned out to be my best friends. I had whole towns. The best one was called Vista, Minnesota. A guy who was helping me, he came back down. He said, when you get over that hill, you're not going to believe it. And I go, why? And he said, you'll wait and see. I get up the top of the hill. Each side of the road, everybody from that town was out there standing like this. It broke my heart because I didn't feel special. You know, as I told one guy, this guy that owned this restaurant, he said, well, when you get here, when you get up to the end of the road, come into my restaurant, I'll give you anything you want. I walk into the restaurant and the man says to me, he said, all these people, you know, all the farmer types with their bib overalls, and they're all sitting there. And this guy says, you got to tell me, what in the hell are you doing that for? All that would come to my ignorant little mind was, I said, it's easier than being married. And everybody in this restaurant started laughing, and I just made friends, you know. One instance I did not make a friend was, I had a found out he was a minister from the church. Not that that was bad, but he came in this station wagon where it was really hot that day too. And I was buying right along the edge of the road. And this guy pulls up with this kind of smoky, smelly station wagon. And as I get up, I look over and he goes, sorry, but I have a question for you. And I went, okay. And there's all these kids in the car. There must be like 8, 9 kids in the car. And he said, did they ever find Buddha's body? And I went, and I'm just going to be logical now. I say, well, yeah, in part they have relics, bone relics from them in different stupas throughout the world. And some of it, they actually tour it around and stuff. And he goes, well, they never found Jesus's body, so what does that tell you? Here's how my mind works. Jimmy Papa's God. Because, and as I tried to tell him, I said, I'm not against Jesus. I'm just saying if that's what you're basing your faith on, find a new faith. That's not what you should be looking at. Why don't you look at what he did, instead of where they couldn't find his body. That was just ridiculous. And then he got all puffy with me. And I just said, this is not the time or place. You got kids. I'm not here to teach these children about Buddhism. So he drove on. I invited him to come back, but he never did come back. So I learned so much because I had to deal with, like Catholics would come out and say, you're an idol worshiper. You have statues of Buddha. And I go, I'm smart enough to know, I wasn't brought up Catholic, but my best friend was. And I walked into Catholic church and there were statues everywhere. You can't go 10 feet without seeing Mother Mary, which I think is cool. But so you see our perceptions of how we trick ourselves actually into believing sometimes the wrong thing. And that's why, taking this right back to April Cades, it may sound like some weird old Chinese thing, but it's really, really good for you. And I'm not teaching, I'm the last person on earth that would try to teach, some type of religious or cultish thing, okay? Like my name is Stuart Alve Olson. There'll never be anything in front of it. I don't care about other people, what they do. I just won't put a title in front of my name. I don't think I deserve it yet because I haven't talked to enough of you people. And, and if we get to have this talk 50 years from now, I did something good. But 50 years has to pass. So, but let's get back to where we belong here. So all these things, and I could go on and on all night about when I bowed. But the point was, when I was bowing, I was doing April Cades in my little tent, Oh, by the way, it was because of April Cades, because one of the vows I took was never to lay down to sleep. I had to sit up. So I would do April Cades, and that would really help. Because actually, you don't have to lay down. Our spine gets weak. That's what happens to us. It's like my first wife was from Indonesia, and when I went there to visit her family, I thought this was hilarious because they had a really lousy furniture. So I offered to go buy them a new couch. And her dad looked at me and he said, "What, you want to kill us?" And I go, what do you mean? No, I was trying to be nice. Would you like to get a nice, because they just had this wood thing. And this is the truth of the matter. He said, yeah, give us something soft and then we'll want us. He goes, like you in America, you have all your lazy boys, all your soft furniture in your cars. It's because your spine is weakening. And I discovered this when I first went to the monastery. Bad timing on my part, by the way. I went there and I was only there a couple of weeks and they started what they call a Chan session, which was 22 hours a day, where you sat, walked for 5 minutes, sat, and then you got lunch, and then it just right till 2 in the morning, and then you had to be up at 4, and you do that for 21 straight days. It explains a lot about my mental state. It was really, really harsh. But the idea here is that I discovered my spine while I was there because we had to sit. And if you didn't sit, people would come up and hit you. They don't do that anymore, but they used to come up with this big stick. It turns out that all of us wanted to have the big stick because that was a way of venting. You'd find somebody that wasn't doing something quite right, and you'd turn into a samurai. So, but I did. I discovered my spine. It woke up. And no, I don't sleep sitting up anymore. I've gotten lazy and weak, and I kind of like my soft stuff. But I can relate to what they were talking about. Because when I went to the monastery, the first bed, I was at Gold Mountain first, the first bed I had was 2 blankets on a wood plank. I'm just a spoiled kid from Minnesota. And that hurt. My bones. And it's because I learned that I'm not relaxed. If you're relaxed, you can sleep on a rock. You just melt into it. It's as we get older, and I'm not telling you to go throw away your beds or your couches. I'm just trying to, yeah, if you do, bring them to my house. No, so the idea here is that what you got to understand is that when you weaken your spine, you develop health problems. We need that spine. You got these 2 anti-gravity muscles that run up, that keep us upright. We're not, primates anymore. We can stand up and talk and see things. Gave us consciousness. We're not like cows, as TT would say. They're dull because their heads are always down and their organs are all separated. Long story, but they're lazy. The idea is for you as a human being to get that spine. Again, 8 brocades. You're doing all sorts of things to strengthen your spine within it. You need your spine. We have like lots of neat little sayings about things like this. Get a backbone. We've been telling ourselves all these things for years. We just didn't relate it properly. So learning to get your spine in order is critical. It really is. And you will, too many of us slouch. The older we get, and we start walking like this. We can't even pick up our feet anymore. And there's the truth to this. All you gotta do is go out in the world and you'll watch it. People are shuffling as opposed to picking up their feet and walking. So Qi Yuan, part of his 8 brocades was he had 3 things. I love these. Sit like a tortoise, walk like a pigeon. I like the walking like a pigeon one really good. The other one was about the deer, But anyway, point is, walking like a pigeon. Pigeons do something that's really unique if you watch them. Yeah, you have to use their head to move forward. So Qi Yuan had this practice where it looks really stupid, so don't let anybody watch you do it. Your neighbors will call the cops. But this idea of using your head. Okay, yeah, they will. They'll be like, there's somebody over there. But this idea, because that helps build your spine. And it also teaches you to pick up your feet. And sometimes they call it walking like a crane, but this translation was pigeon. But the idea is when you picked up your foot to spread your toes, and then when you put your feet down, they just fillet out. So that you're exercising your toes when you walk. You don't do that. The most we do is go get a foot massage, which, they're nice. But the idea here is you want to keep your feet healthy. You need healthy feet. This is like Qi Yuan. He said, if I could teach anybody to do anything, it would be to walk. He wasn't, he really just had this thing, walk. Really simple. It's really cheap. It's just boring as hell. That's why to be honest with you, I like to golf. Because it's a great walk spoiled. But I chase this little white ball. And I don't, and I'm not a good golfer. And I just hope I live a long time to keep playing bad golf. But it takes a, focus. I like it, but it's just an exercise to get me to go walk, because I can't stand walking around my neighborhood. I don't like it. I don't get this. It's not interesting to me. Just not, especially when the dogs come out and chase me. But yeah, so 8 brocades, again, is getting, one of the things it's trying to get to is your spine. But it also talked, and one that I didn't talk to you about was, sleep like a deer. And what that meant was, deer have a very unique thing that they do. And I love Taoists because they're always trying to imitate nature. What a deer does is it puts its one leg hoof over its nose. The other one, the ear, lays on the other leg. And then it draws in its rear legs to close off their anus so that it's not getting rid of energy during sleep. Dogs do it, deer do it, so sometimes it's sleep like a dog. But and he says, sit like a tortoise. I love that one because it means, like, when you do want to meditate, act like you're a tortoise. You just drew your head into your shell, your legs, your tail, everything goes in, and nothing can bother you. Too many people meditate looking to be bothered. Oh, I'm not joking. I used to, when I first moved to Phoenix, well, my story about that was I was living outside of San Francisco, and I decided I didn't like living in America anymore. So I moved to Arizona. And anybody that's done that knows what I'm saying without me explaining it. It turned out to be true. Anyway, the idea here is that sitting like a tortoise, and what I was saying, like, some people, we used to run retreats, because I was trying to give people what I went through with stuff at the monastery. They'd come to my house and then we'd sit, for the weekend or whatever it may be. And it was funny because he's in the back, but Patrick, my student, he was always in charge of the bell. One time we're sitting and there was a girl from Boston, and I'm not kidding you. It was like, without saying a word, I could feel her. She's over there just like, I can feel her anger. And I knew it had something to do with the time, because we were sitting for 40 minutes a shot, which isn't that long, but 40 minutes. So when we were all done, I looked at her and I said, so what was your problem? And she said, I thought Patrick fell asleep and he wasn't going to ring the bell. But this is what happens to us when we start meditating. So my advice to you is, if you're going to take up meditation, just do 15 minutes. Chung Sun Fung had this quarter-hour method. Trick yourself, because that's what you have to do. Sit for 15 minutes, because that really doesn't, you do it and it doesn't feel that long, and then all of a sudden you want to sit longer. You trick yourself. If you say, I'm going to sit an hour, you never will. You'll find 1,000 things to do. I didn't do laundry. I got to cook. I didn't put this away. Oh, I got to drive to the store. All these things come into our head and we won't. So if we just say 15 little minutes and we get used to it, all of a sudden you find when the bell goes off, you don't want to get up. And you're not mad at Patrick. But it is true, though. I mean, I've taught enough and I went through enough. Most of this is my own experience of how I had to trick myself into sitting. Because when I went to the monastery, we had to sit 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. And I was going to die. No, seriously. The most I had ever done was 20 minutes. I don't know what I thought about why I'm going to a monastery to do this stuff. My expectations were much greater than what the realization was going to be. And the thing is that I couldn't take it. My legs were killing me, especially my knee, felt like it was going to rip out of my body. Now I'm sitting with all these monks, so I don't want to look bad, so I just sit there and shake, and I'm in pain. So, okay, I'm in a Buddhist monastery, right? And it's a huge place. There is not one meditation class. They got a university, they got all sorts of things, but not one meditation class. I couldn't figure that out at first. So I went and I caught a monk in the dining room and saying, I'm telling him my plight and I need instruction on meditation. And he says, well, what are you doing? I go, well, I go and I get up on the Chan bench and, I cross my legs like this and I sit, and I try to focus on my nose. And he goes, oh, good, okay. He goes, what's the problem? And I go, but my knee, it hurts. He goes, no, it doesn't. I go, yes, it does. I'm like, you don't know. So he told me to do something. He said, next time your knee hurts, he said, give up everything and just go to it with your mind and find the pain. Find out exactly where it's coming from. You know what happened to me? The pain went to my ankle. Then I focused on my ankle. It went to my hip. Focused on that, went back to my knee again. So I caught the monk again. I asked him what this was about. And he goes, that's just your mind. Your mind, you do not want to sit. Your body's saying, this ain't normal. When we relax, it's with a beer, pizza, and a movie. That's how we relax. Your mind is telling you this. You may not hear it, but that's what it's telling you. Truthfully. So you have to, again, trick your body. And you got to be nice to it too. I don't believe in, I went to this place that was so hardcore that it should have been illegal. I mean, it was just, you have no idea. Try sitting 22 hours a day for 21 days and see where your mind is at after a week. If I had had a car, I would have left. But I flew out there. So, it was not fun. So again, 8 brocades is a way. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because Taoism and Buddhism are so different, even though, they say in China, telling a Taoist from a Buddhist is like telling one Mandarin duck from another. They look just alike, but no, their approach is really different. Buddhism is based on the idea of enlightenment and that life is suffering. All good ideas. I'm a Buddhist. I'm not a very good one, but I'm a Buddhist to a certain degree. But I understand that. Yeah, life is suffering. And I do understand the idea that we want to sit and get enlightened. And come hell or high water, we're going to do it. So the idea of a Zen Buddhist is they look at the mountaintop and they start clawing their way up. They're going to walk straight up. They're going to climb their way right to the top. Problem with that is that most people fall off. There's a big turnover in Zen monasteries because that's really difficult. Whereas Taoism is taking the path of least resistance. And Taoism makes use of a thing called internal alchemy, which Zen people do experience, but it's by accident. They're sitting, the heat develops, things start to move, and it can happen. Not always, but it can. In Taoism, it will. Taoism starts out with this idea that you have to get your body working right. Get this energy moving, and then sitting is that's not the issue anymore. You can walk around and be in a meditative state. There's no difference. And Buddha tried telling us that too. Buddha said there is no difference between your ordinary mind and the Buddha mind. No difference whatsoever. You just don't know it. You are sitting here as damn Buddhas. But you got all this junk in your head that says, no, I'm not. No, I don't know nothing. I'm stupid. Yeah. The way they describe this, I love this description. As human beings, we walk around, we're like a dirty glass of water. We try to look through that glass and we can't see nothing. We're all confused. Yeah, what's on the other side? And we keep thinking, and that's like just keep stirring all the debris in that water. And we never quite can see clearly through that glass. However, if we learn to sit, all the debris sinks to the bottom, and then you can see clearly through it. And that brings up a story, which I have a huge bevy of stories. When I first went to the monastery and I was at Gold Mountain, there was a few days later, this guy named Richard showed up from Iowa. And in the night, this was in the Mission District in San Francisco, so it's pretty busy and noisy and stuff. But at night, Richard, he had been there a few nights and he couldn't take it anymore. So he snuck down the fire escape, went down to the convenience store, had a chocolate pie and a chocolate milk, and then went back and crawled right back up and went to bed. So the next morning, after we're done sitting, Xuanhua, who was just an incredible teacher, he goes, Richard. Richard goes, yeah. He goes, how was the chocolate pie and the chocolate cake? And why didn't you bring some for everybody? And Richard freaked out. He's like, how do you know? He goes, well, and he was like almost crying. Can you read my mind? And Xuanhua said, what? Your mind's a newspaper? Bring it to me. I'd be glad to read it. He goes, no, Richard, I can't read your mind. He said, but it's all over you. He said, my glass, the debris has all went down. I see clearly. Yours is still stirring. Once you get clarity, this is in Taoism, the big thing is clarity and tranquility. Clarity allows you to see things that you normally didn't see before. Now, all of you have had, because if you're a human being, you've had experiences of intuition, of perception. You've all had them. Problem is always having it. You just get moments, like little flickers of stuff. But the idea is that if you cultivate yourself, these things become the norm. It's not psychic. It's just that your mind gets clear. You all have, because in English we have a saying, well, what does your gut tell you? I love that one because it's absolutely true. Did you know your stomach? There's a book out called The Second Brain. Have you heard of it? And it's in your abdomen. You have a second brain because your whole digestive system works on a whole different way than your nervous system. So like, just quickly, if I cut my finger, I cut it, and then it's got to go up here, and then it's got to come back down here, and I go, ow! Now, that's all about a quarter second, but nonetheless, there's a delay between the pain and my expression of it. Stomach, it's immediate. It doesn't even bother with this guy. This guy's the last one to know. The stomach just reacts. We do have a gut feeling. And this is, again, Taoism. Keep everything down here. And then things seem to be clearer. Just like when you were an infant, going back to that. When you were in that crib, sleeping, everything was nice. And you're breathing from here. That's when you were at your best. So get back there. Get back. That's all Taoism is really teaching, is to say, get back. And yeah, there's lots of little secrets and things about doing that, but it's really not complicated.